Also, how can they lie? Who represents them? Like, how can they talk?
Exactly. That's exactly the problem with all of this. That's exactly it. Exactly. Right. I don't know the answer to that question. No one does. Because it doesn't make any logical sense. Right? Yeah.
This is kind of the stuff we were asking all week. Like,
Yeah.
how is this possible? Like, I'm so irate because it's just like ridiculous that this is happening.
Like
So yeah.
the spokesperson came out and said something. He can't get sued because the corporation is the person that he's speaking under. So the corporation has all these rights, and he can't get sued for saying that one thing because he's part of the corporation. That's the whole thing. The individual pieces aren't the corporation itself is the person. It doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys are starting to kind of feel what we were feeling this weekend. Lots of confusion. Let's see, where were we?
Hague versus CIO, the court denies labor unions the right that they had just granted to corporations. So a labor union can't have the same rights that a corporation is getting, which is bizarre, right? Yeah.
Super bizarre. And then Taft versus Hartley, that's when corporations in general are granted free speech. So before we talked about newspaper corporations, but now it seems as though all corporations have that free speech right. So they've moved into that territory. And then after that, we have C versus Seattle, grants corporations the Fourth Amendment protection from random inspections. So that means they can probably be hiding a lot of stuff.
Which is why which is why organizations like the FDA have very minimal power. And oversight is kind of being extinguished. There's not a lot of government regulation on corporations anymore because they have all these protections from stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, this one's fun. All right, so 1976, that's when, so 1976, advertising becomes free speech, and then money equals speech. So, in this situation, if you have money, you have speech, as it remains today, obviously, and then advertising is free speech as well. So, that leads to a lot of kind of false advertisement, and just obviously the ones with the big wallets are having a lot more free speech as well. And then into 1996, corporations gained the right not to speak. So then they didn't have to talk about things that were probably...
There's something called freedom of mind.
Yeah.
So if they don't want to speak, they don't have to. If the public is asking for an explanation about something terrible happens, they have the right not to speak on it, not to offer up explanation for an atrocity.
Right.
All these rights that are given to corporations, they also given to just general public as well.
There's a split, and you can go into it, each one, because that would have taken like a week. But if people get a right, a corporation gets a right because they're a person. And some of these were given directly to corporations. So it's a split based on the individual case. And a lot of these, it's important to say too that, so the Supreme Court wasn't necessarily like pushing this forward. They're not always like just the villain in this. Several judges dissented and were like, this isn't right. Corporations are gaining way too much power in our country, blah, blah, blah. But stuff so fast because they have majority. So, yes.
Yeah, important to notice is not talked about a lot, but the left and the right historically have noted whatever on social issues, people always go, we need to have elect our person to have our people have good decisions in the Supreme Court. But they often forget that both sides always elect pro-corporate voices. Like even the most left-leaning, there's very few exceptions. Notorious RBG is a little bit of a exception, but they're always pro-corporate, which is really sad and overlooked. And that's why they have all of these decisions, is both sides are complicit in appointing these people.
Definitely. Oh man, Citizens United.
Okay, this is one you guys probably all know about, and everyone thinks that this is when corporations just gain personhood, right? But it's actually been building for 200 years, and this is just the most recent thing. So all that stuff you hear about, let's repeal Citizens United, that wouldn't really take care of the issue. So just know that for future reference when you hear candidates talking about that. That's not really enough. That's just like the latest.
It's just the most explicit justification for personhood, and it's also the most recent, so it's kind of, I think it's finally bubbling up in our minds what's happening, but then you realize it's actually been building for ages now. And so that gave them no congressional authority over federal elections. And that one's been all over kind of the news and stuff.
Abolished legislative restrictions that had been set up previously that limited the amount of money that could be given to a campaign or a candidate by a corporation. So that's what it did. It just opened the floodgates for money in elections.
So that's kind of the timeline and the gist. It's really interesting to kind of like look through and really see how slowly corporations became persons. And so what's even more interesting is there's 3 laws why local government has lost its power that he touched on this weekend, and we're going to go over those because they're really interesting. So the first one is obviously corporate constitutional rights. So like we were saying, so like we were saying before, they found constitutional rights for corporations in the Constitution, as I said, but it wasn't like explicitly in there. It didn't, use the word corporation.
They found it.
They found it. AKA they put it there. So that's law number 1 about how they can get away with this.
Oh, state preemption. So this is the state's definition of like state. I hate this stuff.
It's tricky. It's like
Yeah.
the state allows harm by permit. So these big corporations will apply for a permit, and the technical definition of that is a constitutional right to regulate. Regulation means to allow expert-proven safe levels of harm. So technically, when state preemption happens, it's literally like the state allowing corporations to harm you.
Right,
But
and that's why that exists. You can't locally permit them not to do harm because they have their permitted amount of harm that they can do based on the state government.
don't worry, they're expert approved.
Right, yeah, it's an expert approved amount of harm.
Yeah. So that's destructive.
Right, right. I don't know.
And then the third one we have here is Dillon's rule. This was a judge back in like the 1800s.
In Iowa.
In Iowa.
I thought it was in the 40s. I thought this one was fairly
Might be.
recent.
I don't remember. So this was like Dillon. It was weird. He had an idea, and it just kind of
Became a
pushed
rule
the
because he was a
into-
judge.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
he was a judge. So he had this idea of kind of making this analogy of state government is to local government as a parent is to a child. So in that sense, it can literally, the state can dissolve local government. It sounds really bad. It sounds like
Which
they're
just happened in
killing the
Michigan.
child.
Local governments have been just completely dissolved by the state government because they were doing things that the state government didn't like or wanted to shut down, and they could just dissolve them like that because of Dillon's rule, which was never democratically made a law. This was just a judge had a nifty little idea, and then you can dissolve the township's government based on Dillon.
Thank you, Dillon. Can you imagine your government just like disappearing like that? That'd be ridiculous. And so these are like the 3 main laws why the local government has lost its power and why you feel kind of helpless when small towns can't ban things. It's because these 3 have kind of been put in place to protect persons, aka